some water.
Good evening. Just saying hi to everyone as we get started. Ellen, I actually recognize you from Instagram. I love your pictures because that
I saw you. I said, I think that. Yes, I recognize you too. I was like, I think that's the doctor.
Miss Lottie keeps muting it.
Doc, you just went mute. Oh, she keeps mute.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Turn Obesity Around, a regional webinar series. We are so glad that you are with us tonight. So happy that you joined us. We are happy that we have viewers who are watching us via Facebook, viewers that are watching us via YouTube, and viewers that are watching us, joining us, of course, tonight via Zoom. We just thank God for this opportunity to talk about turning obesity around. This is a production of the National Baptist Convention, USA Incorporated, Federal Faith-Based Initiative, H.O.P.E, Health and Human Services Partnership. Tonight, we're going to talk about what the Turn Obesity Around initiative is about. Before we further go, I want to acknowledge our convention leadership, our president, Dr. Jerry Young, our general secretary, Dr. Alvin Edwards, our chair of Federal Faith-Based Development Initiatives, Dr. Alvin Love, and of course, our national director, the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, liaison to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Michael O. Minor. Again, this is a production of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, where we are envisioning the future exceptionally. Let's talk a little bit about turning obesity around. In America, nearly 80 million adults are obese. Sadly, nearly 50% of non-Hispanic Blacks are obese. Additionally, diabetes affects 34.2 million Americans, or 10.5% of the population have diabetes. That is 1 out of every 10 Americans. Disproportionately, 11.7% of non-Hispanic Blacks in the United States have diagnosed diabetes. What can we do? We do to turn these numbers around. The National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, NBCUSA, is launching a national education awareness campaign entitled Turn Obesity Around. It's focused on educating our member congregations and the communities that they serve about the adverse impact of obesity and diabetes on the quality and quantity of their lives. This webinar is part of a series of the NBCUSA Turn Obesity Around webinar series. Yes, we recognize that obesity is a major problem in the Black community. However, there is simply no one-size-fits-all solution. There are, just as there are many members in the one body, there are many different health situations that we fall into. So we must look at every individual and develop a continuum of intervention. A continuum of intervention efforts is needed to address this prevalent and complicated health condition. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to hear from two of our NBCUSA HOPE team members who will share about different aspects of NBCUSA HOPE Turn Obesity Around continuum. I'll begin with a really brief overview of the NBCUSA HOPE Turnaround initiatives. Briefly, I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Miner, who is our national director. He serves as the president of Mid-South Churches Baptist State Convention and the pastor of the Hill Hernando Baptist Church. He leads our Hope Ministry. He's unable to be with us tonight because of some health challenges that he was having, but he certainly sends his greetings and sends his love to everyone. I want to go ahead and introduce Sister Nettie Johnson, who is going to be one of our panelists tonight. And I'm going to spotlight Nettie for us if I can here. And I love to replace the spotlight with the faces of the experts, because these are the folks who you guys want to hear. So first, Nettie Johnson. She's going to share with us about holistic approaches to weight management and the physical fitness aspects of behavioral modification. Sister Nettie, again, I'm glad that I'm off the camera because you are the expert in that area. Just a little bit about Sister Johnson. She's an author, a podcaster. She is a credentialed health educator and the founder of Education for Transformation, a wellness organization that develops and delivers curated education and programming addressing African-American health disparities. And we already know that African-Americans suffer from more health disparities than any other population. We're focusing tonight, of course, on diabetes and obesity, but there are many other disparities that plague our community. So science-based, faith-empowered solutions for healthy weight management is Nettie's area of passion and specialty. And we know that weight management helps to contain a whole lot of conditions. A Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Culture of Health leader, Nettie also holds multiple fitness and health coaching certifications. She's a member of the Society for Public Health Education, SOPHE, and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Nettie also serves as a health ambassador trainer and the National Physical Fitness Coordinator for NBC HOPE. Nettie, thank you for being with us tonight. Appreciate you.
Be here.
We're going to move on to another subject matter expert, Sister Ellen McKnight. Hello, Sister Ellen. So Ellen is the principal partner of the Maxine firm. The Maxine firm is a nutrition, public health, and wellness firm. The firm is powered by a network of healthcare professionals whose primary objective is chronic disease prevention in urban and rural communities, promoting healthy lifestyle changes and providing urban communities with economic development opportunities by way of fresh food by fresh food access. I apologize. It's Sister McKnight's life goal and passion. Let me say that again. Promoting healthy lifestyle changes and providing urban communities and rural communities with economic development opportunities by way of fresh food access is her life goal and passion. I think she's trying to get rid of those food deserts that plague us, whether we live in the city or whether we live in the country. Sister McKnight is a member of the Baton Rouge Diabetic Association, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the National Organization of Blacks in Dietetics and Nutrition, and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She also serves as the National Nutrition Coordinator for the NBCUSA HOPE team. And then finally, last but not least, our esteemed guest tonight, Dr. Sylvia Gonson Bowley. And I hope I did not mispronounce anything. I have been practicing all day long. And we're gonna just call her Dr. Bowley. Thank you for allowing us to just do the last part of the name there. But Dr. Bowley, we're so glad to have you. We thank you for joining us tonight. And she is dual board certified internal medicine physician and obesity medicine specialist, and the medical director of Embrace Your Weight and Wellness medical practice and coaching program. From 2017 to 2019, Dr. Bowley was site leader and medical director for the Bone Secure medically supervised weight loss program. Did I mispronounce that?
It's okay.
Say it for us. Say it.
Bon Secours. You are great. You're doing
Bon Secours.
awesome, Miss Lottie.
Thank you. Thank you. It is a supervised weight loss program where she helped over 60 program enrollees successfully lose an average of 40 pounds within 6 months. Praise God for that. Over the years, Dr. Bowley has successfully helped hundreds of general weight management patients lose weight and keep it off with or without weight loss medication based on the individual's weight loss needs. Dr. Bowley is also skilled at assisting with medical weight loss prior to bariatric surgery and maintaining weight loss after bariatric surgery. In 2020, Dr. Bowley decided to combine her personal and professional experiences to create Embrace You Weight and Wellness. Embrace You Weight and Wellness. This organization offers a personalized, holistic, scientific approach to sustainable weight loss. Through her personal and professional experience, Dr. Bowley has learned that everybody is different. As we said earlier, one size does not fit all. And so their weight loss strategy needs to be individualized to their uniqueness for sustainable weight loss. Ladies, we're so glad to have you here tonight. So very, very glad. I'm going to do my best to get each of you on screen for a moment so that we can at least see all three of our speakers at one time. These lovely ladies, we're so glad to have you. And we're just going to move right into our question and answer session, if that is okay with you all. All righty. So let's begin and let's look back at 2013. And after last year, it seems like it was a long time ago, but it really wasn't. But in 2013, the Office of Minority Health asked us to conduct a pilot called Turn the Beat Around. And when I say us, I mean NBCUSA H.O.P.E. And the purpose of this pilot was to test the efficacy of using health ambassadors to affect sustained better involvement in communal health. And our health ambassadors is a team of trained laypersons who go out teaching congregations and the communities they serve how to be healthier. So the study took place in several Alabama cities, and the results of the study showed that the intervention was indeed effective. The results were published in a peer-reviewed journal. So this began NBC's Turn Around efforts. We followed that success with efforts around the Affordable Care Act and then NIH's All of Us research program. Turn Obesity Around will become our fourth funded turnaround that looks to continue our success in achieving turnaround. That's our focus, turning bad numbers into good numbers. So let's talk about ways tonight that we can turn obesity around. Sister Nettie, before we get started, do you mind sharing your personal story? And I don't call it a personal story, I call it a testimony. We're people of faith, so I'm going to say a testimony about obesity. I'm gonna spotlight you for a moment and give you an opportunity just to share that very, very moving. It's really moving, folks. I mean, that's the only word I could place on it. It's in your hands, Nettie.
Oh, bless.
Moving testimony.
So, thank you so much, Sister Lottie. And I agree with you. I think testimony is a much better word for it. But basically, I have had experience with the condition of overweight for most of my life. As a child, I was always over the weight curve. I carried extra weight, and I had conditions like asthma and other types of things that I just thought was normal because it was my life. A lot of members of my family also carried extra weight. And to be honest, I did not think anything of it until I remember very clearly it was my sophomore year, the first day of finals. I was 17 years old, and I got that call in the very early morning. And you know, when you get a call in the morning, it's typically not good. And it was a call from my sister saying that my father died. And he went to sleep the night before and just did not wake up that next morning. And you're never ready to lose a person, you know, that you love. Death, you know, you're never ready for it. But it was so shocking, not only for me, but also for the rest of my family, because I remember that for the next, you know, couple of weeks, we just kept saying is we couldn't believe it, we couldn't believe it, because we didn't think that Daddy was sick. In our minds, he didn't have a sickness because he didn't have cancer. He was never in the hospital. We didn't see those things that we thought were necessarily illness. But in the next couple of years, when I got into my mid-20s, and I was later diagnosed with a heart condition in addition to the exercise-induced asthma that I had. And starting to look at my family tree a little bit more, I came to realize that as I look back, I never really remember in my life seeing my father well. My father had multiple chronic diseases, multiple conditions, and because it was so prevalent, things like hypertension, diabetes, overweight, all of that, that was so prevalent in my family. I thought that it was just natural. It was normalized to me to the point that I thought that it was like this gray hair that I have, that when you get to a certain age, you're going to be on pills, you're going to have these. And so and it wasn't until I was away from that a little bit and facing a diagnosis in the age of 20 that I said, I have to do something, because I too was carrying extra weight, and I knew that I was on the path to some of those chronic diseases, and I wanted to do something to try to stop that. So yeah, I started the next maybe 10, 15 years trying a little bit of everything. You name the diet, I tried it, I did it. And you know what? It worked for a while. The pounds would come off, and then they would come back bringing friends, and I went up and down it. And that went on for literally more than a decade. It got to the point that there was a period where I destroyed my gallbladder. I had to have my gallbladder taken out. I see doctors shaking her head. In my efforts to make myself well, I was making myself sick, because I was just going after anything. Y'all, this continued on, and I would have my down periods and then have my up periods. Literally, I imagine that in that period of trying, I probably gained and lost about 300 pounds. I tried to add it up one time, back and forth, lose 50, gain 40. It was just ridiculous. I recall I eventually, in year 2000, decided that I was going to make this turn of the century decision, and I joined a very prominent weight loss program, the nation's leading weight loss program, for the 5th time. Got the weight off, and I ended up working for the company. I worked for them for about a decade, actually. Everything from doing individual work with clients to being a national trainer. And before I left, I directed their operations for the states of Texas and Oklahoma. And in that period of time, I saw and assisted a lot of people that were struggling with the condition of having just overweight and obesity, and just really seeing the challenges. And I learned a lot. But y'all, when I left corporate and decided to come home to be with my children, I had 2 kids. I just said, you know what, without these resources, without being connected to the company, literally, I was at a healthy weight, but every day was a struggle. I was struggling. So for me, I wasn't well, because when you think about health and wellness, it is holistic. Even though I was holding this number, it was a miserable thing. And I remember very clearly, I said, you know what, Lord, I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of struggling. I'm just going to go on ahead, and whatever happens, happens. And I remember the Holy Spirit told me, you're struggling, surrender it. And it became a very different thing when my mind started to get renewed, when I stopped carrying the weight of having extra weight, if that makes sense. And I started to do things like renew my mind. And instead of following a plan or a program that was popular, that worked for other people, I started taking the knowledge that he had blessed me to be able to learn, because we live in a time, y'all, where there is a lot of knowledge and information that's available, but I had to find a way to make it personal and applicable and livable for me. So now, another 10 or more than that, 10 years passed. I'm getting up in age. For the past 10 to 12 years, I went and got a number of certifications, went back to school, got health education degree, and got a number of different additional resources because my heart and my passion is helping other people to end that struggle, to find a place where you are comfortable and well in your skin. And it starts with a renewal of our mind. It starts with awareness. It starts with information. But then it goes into finding those elements of what is going to work for you. Because weight management is more than just calories in versus calories out. It is a very complex issue. And so there are a lot of different elements that come into play. And so now what I really love, and I'm so excited that the National Baptist Convention is doing, is I love helping people to take a look at this, because we often don't talk about it a lot, or take some of these steps that are within our reach to help us to overcome this condition and improve our health. I'm sorry, somebody was muted. Sister Nadia?
Wow. Wow. That was
Sorry, I hope I didn't take
absolutely
a while.
fabulous. Thank you. What a testimony. I heard you say how you struggled. And then I heard you say how when the Lord brought you out of the struggle, how your heart and your passion, which was already for helping people, you just became more resolved in that. I can imagine why this passion area of service is so strong for you, because you went through this, you lived it. It's not something that you just do as a job. It's who you are. What are some of the negative health consequences of obesity?
Sure. As prevalent as this condition is, oftentimes we find ourselves, when we have the condition, we're living with increased risks for a number of different conditions, a large variety. As a matter of fact, when we look at African Americans specifically, and the top causes of death and disability, and this is, pre-COVID, we take COVID out of this, maybe 2017 data. 4 of the top 5 causes of death and disability, you're at a higher risk for those when we carry extra weight. These include conditions of heart disease, all of the diseases of the heart, certain types of cancer, everything from liver cancer to kidney cancer to colorectal cancer, breast cancer, ovarian, thyroid, endometrial. There is a higher risk when we have extra weight, when we have the condition of overweight or obesity. There's a higher risk there. Also, things like stroke, diabetes. So we can just go on. You can have higher cholesterol levels. Things even as far as how you feel, osteoarthritis, where we start to have a breakdown with the cartilage and in between the bones in our joints, where have more pain. And aside from these conditions that can either, be like comorbidity or just cause us to have a condition of disability, there are mental connections. We find some mental health things like higher incidences of clinical depression, anxiety, and other mental conditions, as well as the body pain and sometimes the difficulty of mobility. And oftentimes, what I personally experienced, again, because this was not something where it changed. I mean, for as long as I can remember, I had the condition of being overweight. I again accepted feeling less than my best as normal. I didn't know what it would feel like to not have that. And unfortunately, that happens. Many of these conditions can sometimes be silent, like heart disease is often a silent killer. You may not know that you have them. You may not know that you're feeling as well as you possibly can, but there are a lot of conditions that keep us from living beneath our God-given potential that are connected to the condition of overweight and obesity.
Mm-hmm. So there is a lot to obesity. And it sounds like you're saying it's not just about appearance. It's about how we feel every day. Not necessarily that we feel sick, but we could feel better because our body's not functioning at the optimal level. So it would seem like people would want to do better about their weight, knowing that not doing so is effectively a death sentence, whether that death happens in the very near future or whether they're blessed to stay here a long time, because oftentimes people do have the quantity of life, but there's no quality there. So why do so many people suffer from obesity, have problems losing weight and or keeping it off?
Wow, I think that's a really great question. And I would also love to hear from Dr. and Ellen about this as well. I think bottom line is that it is challenging. It
Mhm.
is challenging. If it was a very simple, straightforward formula, I mean, how many of us have heard for decades? And I actually used to say this all the time. It's just a matter of energy balance. If you take in more calories than you're expending, you're going to gain weight. So if you flip that script and you expend more than you take, then you're going to lose weight. If it was that simple, I mean, it would be a very different thing, but there's so many other elements that are involved. Everything from our biology and our genetics to even our ecology, things in the environment. And I'm not even talking about things like maybe toxic exposures, but even if you think about the environment in which we live and we work, is it set up for us to be able to take those steps, to have the ability to have access to foods that will support us, the ability to have safe places to exercise? There are structural things that are sometimes even outside of our control that can come into play. Sometimes medications that we may be on or conditions that we have with our health can cause us. Age, goodness gracious, once you get to certain ages, we start to begin to gain weight typically until we get into our
Amen.
mid 60s when our bodies begin to lose weight. So there are a lot of factors that are involved. And because it isn't a one size fits all approach, oftentimes individuals have a hard time finding their fit to get fit. That's what I find also. I'm trying to help people to find their fit. And if we think about it, when you actually follow the dollars in this nation, and unfortunately, when it comes to healthcare, which a lot of people say is often like sick care because so much money is put into helping to manage illness versus prevent it, there's not necessarily abundant resources available for people to find their individual fit. On the flip side, there's so much money and resources going into advertising foods that are not healthy for us, making them readily available for us, keeping us from things that actually can help us to do better. So it's almost like there are a lot of things, biological, genetic, cultural. I just said cultural. Let me just back up there. We even have some mind stuff. Like literally, when I work with individuals, we start with the renewing of our mind. Even the normalization sometimes of carrying extra weight to the point that we don't even think that it's a problem. There's so many issues that are involved. That's why efforts like this, like what the National Baptist Convention is doing, and people are doing all over the place that are trying to just at least drive awareness, have us to take a look at it, to assess where we are, to have not just it be a head thing, but a heart thing, and then connect with resources and information to help us to take steps so that we can make some of these changes to actually turn it around. That's what we're trying to do, to kind of help people to get out of this cycle of struggle.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you are right. There are many organizations that are working to counter this, to counteract all of the negative advertising that gets us interested in foods that we probably never thought about, that increase these obesity issues. And we know that National Baptist Convention USA is not the only organization that does that. I want to go back to our beginning slide that we had, because I did not fully acknowledge everyone that I should have, and that was my error. And I want to remind everyone again that our sponsor tonight is Novo Nordisk. This is a production of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated. Dr. Jerry Young is our president, but we are so pleased and so happy to have as a sponsor Novo Nordisk, and talking about a variety of organizations that are trying to drive us towards turning obesity around. Novo Nordisk is definitely one of those organizations. Before we go any further, Sister Nettie, I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of exercise, but I want to just stop for a moment and give Dr. Boise Kimber an opportunity to speak to us. He serves as our board chair for the National Baptist Convention Incorporated. And he's going to provide us with a high level overview of the NBCUSA Incorporated Novo Nordisk collaboration, using highlights from the NBCUSA Novo Nordisk Partnership Statement. Dr. Kimber, I'm going to bring you on the spotlight. So very pleased to have you with us tonight, and it is in your hands, sir.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Minor, and to Novo Nordisk. We're delighted to have this partnership with you, and it has been a great partnership thus far. I want to thank Reverend Minor for all of his hard work in which he does with the H.O.P.E initiative, and to these wonderful, wonderful guests. It is a high power guest selection tonight. And let me say this to you. I love my Black women, especially when they are just doing what is right for our people. And to those who are joining us tonight, on behalf of our president, Dr. Jerry Young, we certainly appreciate you joining us. We were with the Northeast a month or so ago. We're with the Southeast tonight. I can't see who's on, but I know that Dr. Donald Green, who is the regional vice president of the Southeast, who is from South Carolina. I think that Brenda Eason, who's president of our ushers and nurses. We have Reverend Corbett, who is the president of the General Baptist State Convention in Georgia. We have I.E. Mack, who is also the president of the Fellowship Convention in Georgia. If I'm missing someone, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Obesity, the conversation is just a great conversation. And since we have been doing these seminars, I've certainly been watching what I eat. Now, my wife is sitting over here looking at me very strange about, I've been watching what I've been certainly trying to watch it. But thank God for you again to have our president and Norbert Nordisk. We want to thank you, Kim Williams. Thank you so very much for working with us. And we will continue to do what we can do to inform our people on the obesity and the proper way that we should be eating and exercising and living. Thank you so very much, Ms. Minor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kimber. We do appreciate your leadership. We thank you for leading the way in this collaboration with Novo Nordisk. And again, I apologize. I was a little bit out of sorts when I came onto the call. We've been facing some health challenges in the Minor home. So thank you for bringing us up. Thank you,
and we're praying for you. And we're praying for you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Again, I wanted to share again our title screen. This little sign right here should hopefully keep us all keep in the forefront of our minds in terms of turning obesity around. Again, in this collaboration of the National Baptist Convention and Novo Nordisk, who is our sponsor. All right, we're going to go back and talk a little bit about exercise with Sister Nettie. The part we save exercise for last as far as your segment. We save the best for last, Sister Nettie. We don't always think it's the best, but share with us a little bit about the importance of exercise. Share a few holistic steps to help us do better with our exercise. Go ahead.
Okay, all righty. Well, here's the thing. I actually very much enjoy exercise. So let me just say that it was not my normal life path, because I had exercise-induced asthma, and I literally thought that I was allergic to exercise. Like I failed gym in high school. Like that's how this is. I refuse. So that was my history, and I flipped and I turned the corner with exercise. So I get very excited about it, but I'm gonna just take a moment because I want us to get to nutrition and to hear Dr. Share with us about some other interventions as well. Let me just start this by saying, exercise is helpful, but it certainly is not enough to turn the corner. I think that many people can relate to maybe working out a whole lot and then not seeing the scale move. I can recall times when I would work out for like 2 hours a day and then leave the gym and roll up into a fast food place and get a number 9 and with a supersized, and wonder why the scale wasn't moving. It is very hard to outrun, to out cycle, to out Zumba, whatever. It's hard to out work out a bad diet, right? There are other things that are important. However, let me just say where exercise is very important, and it is an important part of this puzzle, so let's not discount it. I'm a member of the National Weight Control Registry, which is the largest longitudinal study of individuals that have lost weight and kept it off. This is more than 10,000 individuals that have lost anywhere from 30 to 300 pounds and have maintained it anywhere from, I think it's 3 years up to somebody who has kept their weight off for 66 years. So Dr. Hill, who is behind this study, is trying to look at what works. Whereas people take a number of different ways to lose weight, what they're finding in getting to a healthy weight and maintaining it, listen to this as it relates to exercise. They found that 98% of the individuals that got back to a healthy weight and stayed there, 98% changed the way they eat. So that goes to what you're saying, Dr. Kimber, and Ellen's going to talk more about nutrition, which is a big picture. But they also found that 94% of these individuals exercise regularly. As a matter of fact, 90% of the individuals that were able to get to a healthy weight and keep it off exercise at least an hour a day, almost every day during the week. So exercise does impact a lot of aspects. It, of course, impacts our caloric expenditure. It impacts our metabolism. It helps the body to do everything from release stress, which stress can cause us to, again, eat. It can help us with releasing toxins. There are a lot of metabolic as well as mental benefits. But it is very important that we can start to move towards exercising our body more because our body needs it for overall health. That's why the National Baptist Convention also does have that other initiative that we're doing called Let's Move National Baptist, where we're encouraging people to find something that works wherever you are in your level of ability and to start just getting used to moving our bodies more. God made our bodies to move, and it can be helpful. Although you can't exercise as like the silver bullet to get a lot of extra weight off, it is important in the process of weight loss. It's definitely important in the process of weight maintenance, and it's also good for our overall health.
Excellent. Thank you. That brought it all into perspective in terms of exercise, because sometimes we do stress about the physical activity. So we want to bring up, well, thank you, Sister Nettie, first of all, fabulous testimony. You touched on things that I think mean a lot to all of us in terms of trying to become healthier and treat our bodies better. So thank you so much for that. We're going to move now to Sister Ellen McKnight, and she's going to talk about nutrition. Dr. Kimber told us he's watching what he's eating, and I think most of us do that. But Sister Ellen's going to try to help us do it the right way. I know I try to watch as well, Dr. Kimber, and sometimes I'm watching the red velvet cake and I'm watching the turkey sandwich that has mayo on it. Okay, it's turkey, but it's got mayo on it. So did I really do the right thing? So Sister Ellen, share with us a little bit about the work that you do as a nutrition expert. Help us understand what you do and how that can help us turn obesity around.
Thank you so much, Sister Minor, and just so glad to be with you all this evening. As she's already said, my name is Ellen McKnight. I'm a nutrition, wellness, and public health advocate, and I'm the principal of the Maxine Firm. And so what we have the privilege to be able to do is to provide culturally appropriate health education, health literacy programming in rural and urban communities that speak to chronic disease prevention. So oftentimes, a lot of our communities are disproportionately affected by chronic diseases, and there are those who come into our community who aren't necessarily speaking our language, who aren't effectively communicating with us due to the delivery method is not as appropriate. And so the work that we do, I work with a team of minority healthcare professionals as myself, a horticulturalist, a clinical psychologist, primary care provider, family nurse practitioner, and a fitness instructor. And we go into different communities across the state of Louisiana and the rural South, providing these experiences that equip them with strategies to make healthier decisions. So that's who I am, that's what I do, and that's why I do it.
Oh, wonderful. Beautiful. So you are definitely qualified to share about nutrition. We have heard all your credentials, and then you just gave it to us in a nutshell. You told us that is who you are and what you do and why you do it. So it's all about helping us to do better. So share with us what role nutrition plays in this NBCUSA Hope Turn Obesity Around initiative, this collaboration between NBCUSA and Novo Nordisk.
So yeah, so it's, you know, at the heart of the work that this initiative is doing, it's all about chronic disease prevention, and you know, nutrition is just the integral part of preventing chronic diseases. So you know, we talked about physical activity, we talked about mindset. Sister Nettie also spoke on the social determinants of health, other factors that contributed to chronic illness. We're going to talk to Doc next. But, you know, nutrition is crucial. You know, she said you cannot outrun a bad diet, and that is very much so. And so what I like to encourage folks to do is whenever they are consuming food or choosing food or selecting food, it's just really important to ask yourself, you know, one question: is the food that I'm about to put in my mouth and my body, is it combating chronic disease, or is it encouraging chronic disease? And so, or is it contributing to chronic disease? And so, you know, that it's, you can't outrun a bad diet. You know, we've heard the 80-20 rule, you know, it's 20% physical activity, 80% nutrition. You know, it's really, 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 every organ in our body, you know, needs us to eat properly, right? And so there's a book called Food is Medicine. And essentially, you know, I want to encourage you to think about food in that way. You know, food is made up of nutrients. So, you know, several vitamins and minerals. And that's the reason why we eat, because every organ in our body needs those vitamins and minerals on a day-to-day basis. And when we aren't eating real food, when we don't give the organs in our body those essential vitamins and minerals that it needs, they shut down on us. They don't work at the optimum capacity. You know, it's more difficult for them to function. So nutrition is integral to this Turn the Obesity Around effort with National Baptist.
Fabulous, fabulous. I'm thinking of a dilemma or a mystery that most of us, if we don't deal with it personally, we have someone in our household or in our immediate family who may be dealing with this. And it is a type of quote unquote addiction. I suffer from it. There are two S's involved in it. One of them is salt, and I'm not addicted to salt. I don't care for it. But the other one is a 5-letter word, and it is a dirty word to me because I have an addiction to it. It's called sugar. And I think a lot of people suffer from that. So talk to us a little bit about why so many people are addicted to salt and sugar.
So that's a really good question. There is a clinical psychologist that I work with. Her name is Dr. Megan Bourne, and she talks about the obsession with primarily sugar. And so, and it lends itself back to neurotransmitters that are in our body, in our brain. And so essentially, you know, oftentimes it's like the addiction to those like really good feelings. But the issue with that is that with sugar, it's the crash afterward, right? And so I hate to parallel them to drugs, but it's similar. There's been research that links added sugar and refined sugar to things like the effects of drugs on our brain and like the addiction piece. So I just want to encourage you guys, like, you know, just to be very, really mindful about the amount of sugar that you take in, especially added sugar. I want to encourage you, you know, sugar is sugar, but I want to encourage you to lean more towards natural sugars. If you do have these sweet tooths and things like that, and taking things like natural fruits and things like that, because those natural fruits that offer natural sugar do offer your body those vitamins and minerals that you would not get from an added sugar. So I want you to just be mindful of that. And then also if you're having difficulty with sugar, or if you're trying to stay away from type 2 or type 1 diabetes, you definitely want to link up with a clinical registered dietitian and or a clinical psychologist to discuss, why am I having this obsession with sugar or food? And then also with the salt piece, those are, so with the salt, you want to make certain that the levels in your body are where they need to be, like your iodine levels, your potassium, phosphorus, so on and so forth. You just want to make certain that, you want to try to make certain that, figure out why am I experiencing this addiction. So it's just really, really good and a really, really good practice to speak with your primary care provider so they can provide you with a panel of your blood work so they can see what's high and what's low in terms of your vitamins and minerals, if you're experiencing these cravings for different things, because sometimes cravings are indicative of other things going on in your body. And then also with the sugar piece, you want to make certain that, you're consuming foods in this most natural form for the average healthy American. And if you're experiencing challenges like type 1 or type 2 diabetes, definitely want to consult with your primary care provider, your registered clinical dietitian, so they can, compare your blood work and, your panel, and then also a clinical psychologist to kind of speak to maybe some of the reasons why you're having these cravings.
Wow. So we have to get to the root of the addiction, just like we would if it were an addiction to some type of other chemical substance. Same concept. Wonderful. Thank you. So in your efforts, I know that you've seen people who are sort of like cars on bad gas. We talk about a car that has bad gas, how it starts and stops. In the dieting world, it's called yo-yo dieting. So is there a health danger in this so-called yo-yo dieting? And if so, explain what it is.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think Sister Nettie spoke about that whole yo-yo dieting or her personal experience with that. And, essentially you want to keep your body at an equilibrium, if you will. You don't want to ever put your body in a constant state of shock, right? So I'm doing really good for a little while, then I'm doing super bad over here. Then I'm doing super good for a little while, then I'm doing super bad. The whole point behind yo-yo dieting, that occurs because folks start diets that aren't sustainable. Folks will start eating restrictive diets that they aren't able to maintain over a lifetime. And to make certain that you stay away from that, I want to encourage you all to try to eat the most balanced in the most balanced way possible. Essentially what that means is, I always talk about my plate. Dr. Miner teases me because, I'll whip it out at any point. But, just making small choices across my plate that you can incorporate over a lifetime. And so if you don't know, my plate is the USDA's guide for balanced nutrition, if you will. We used to have the pyramid, but that got a little bit confusing, and now we use my plate. And so, there's grains, proteins, dairy, fruit and vegetables on that plate, 5 components. And for every one of those group, there's opportunity for you to do the right thing, and there's opportunity for you to do the wrong thing. And so as we talk about sustainable nutrition and, making healthy decisions in each of those groups, those are things like, choosing whole grains instead of refined grains. Those are things like choosing lean proteins and choosing good fats instead of proteins that are high in saturated fat that's linked to heart disease, and of course, high blood pressure and stroke, and so on and so forth. And those good fats that also, help improve our overall mental state with anxiety and depression because of the omega-3 fatty acids. That means, making certain that you choose fresh fruit and vegetables as often as you can. If you can't get it fresh, go ahead and get it frozen. If you can't get it frozen, we have to go the can route, make sure it says no salt added, rinse it on off. And, there's a lot of controversy in the dairy space, but what you do want from dairy is the vitamin D, and you want the calcium. And so there are other options out there for you all that aren't necessarily cow's milk, because they're not cows. And so, you can explore that, like I said, with your registered clinical dietitian, and then also your primary care provider. But essentially, the yo-yo dieting, it is as a result of us doing something that is just not sustainable over the long term. And, there are different ways that we can augment or change our diet on a day-to-day basis so we can make sustainable changes as it relates to our nutrition.
Fabulous. Sustainable change. That is what it's about. It's a lifetime journey. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Sister Ellen. We appreciate that. And I see the tie-ins. I see the connection between Sister Nettie's presentation and yours. I see how it's coming together. We're going to move in a moment to Dr. Bowley, who's going to talk about the personal connection, her personal connection to obesity and its relationship to health. I want to do a quick commercial before I go to Dr. Bowley, again, to acknowledge our National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, H.O.P.E Health Ministry, and Novo Nordisk. Novo Nordisk is our sponsor, and we do certainly thank them for this opportunity to share about turning obesity around. We're going to move now to Dr. Bowley, and we are so happy to have you tonight. Thank you for taking time out to be with us. And as I mentioned a moment ago, I understand that you too have a personal connection to obesity and its relationship to health. So would you share with us what drives your passion for this area of health?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Sister Minor, for having me into the convention. And also, I've really enjoyed hearing Nettie and Ellen speak. Those were very touching stories, and they hit on so many key points. So thank you so much. What a great panel to be a part of. So my story actually starts with my grandma Sylvia, who I'm named after. And so Grandma Sylvia, she was a beautiful, full-figured woman who was an entrepreneur, a home ec teacher, and a master baker. Miss Lottie, you spoke about that red velvet cake. She could do that and some more. And so I grew up hearing stories about Grandma Sylvia and just, really admired her. She lived overseas in Liberia, West Africa, and I didn't get to meet her till I was 8. And by the time I met Grandma Sylvia, she had survived the Liberian Civil War, which left her 3 years with no medical access to care. And by the time I saw her, that full figure had actually morphed into the disease of obesity, and she had all the complications of it. So she had diabetes, which required insulin that I used to help give to her. She had hypertension, glaucoma, and eventually had a massive stroke. And, that left her incapacitated for the last 7 years of her life, and she was total care dependent. So from a young age, this really stood out to me because I have this independent, vibrant woman who I had gained so many of these skills. I'm very crafty. I love baking. I gained so much of that from her and my faith in Christ. She's the one who introduced me, made sure I went to school. So to see her not even be able to talk, not even be able to dress herself, it left an impression and made me want to go into medicine. And actually, to be honest, it made me kind of fat phobic. If I be really real, I was calorie counting and restricting from a young age, like in my teens. And I did that pretty much till I got to college, and I discovered candy. And I went to school in the South. And so, and we used to like to go speak of Baptist church. I'll be really honest. We used to go into the Baptist church because they had free dinner after. And then you would have the cakes and the fried chicken and mac and cheese and all of that. So I discovered all of this in college because we didn't grow up eating dinner and candy. And that's how I cope with my stress. And talk about sugar addiction. That's where mine developed. I used it to cope with stress. So it was fine. I had the metabolism to keep up with it until I got married. Then I gained 15 pounds with marriage, and that was still okay. I still was in what was a normal BMI range. But then I had my first child. And that is when my Grandma Sylvia genes kicked in. I gained 60 pounds with my first baby. And I kept 40 pounds of that on way past the baby weight stage, 2 years postpartum. And I did that really through a combination of poor stress management. I didn't know how to manage my stress other than eating sugar, and sleep deprivation. And then by then I had another drug, which was cheap pizza and chocolate cake. So that's how I cope with it. And these things are addictive. They hit the same receptors in the brain. I know my other panelists, they're very polite. Miss Ellen, she didn't want to say it, but yes, they hit the same receptors as other hard drugs, and they are very addictive, especially if you're predisposed to being addicted to sugar and what we call highly palatable foods. So I had that. And really, it wasn't until 2 years into my journey that really being who I am and being a child of God, I started feeling very convicted of it because like God would not let me fake the funk. Like, so I would go to counsel my patients. I say, I see here you need to lose weight. What are you eating? And then a little voice in my ear, it's the Holy Spirit, right? So he'd be like, what are you eating? And I'd be like, I think of that chocolate cake and that fried chicken, and my mouth would get quiet. So then I say, are you exercising? Then Holy Spirit say, are you exercising? And then I get quiet, and the literature, the scientific literature actually supports this because doctors who have obesity or overweight are less likely to diagnose and treat obesity. So I was starting to live that. And so I knew that if I was going to be the best doctor I could be and actually feel comfortable as a woman, feel confident, be able to play with my kids, be energetic, that I needed to lose the weight. But I tried to do it the wrong way. I know that now because I thought I knew what to do, which Nettie talked about the calories in versus calories out. I tried that. So the first week I was like, I'm going to exercise 2 hours every day after I work a 14-hour shift and I come home with a 2-year-old. I know I'm going to get this 2 hours of exercise in. I'm going to stop eating sugar today, even though I haven't controlled my stress. And within 1 week, I had done 0 of that. And I felt awful. And I really was beating up myself and then talking negatively to myself, like, you know better, you're a doctor, you should know what to do, why aren't you doing it? And really what transformed my journey was a good friend of mine said, be nice to Sylvia, I like her. And so that simple act of self-compassion, act of love really taught me God shifted my perspective to learn to love my neighbor as myself, right? So I had to love myself and then I could do the things that I needed to do. And I slowly but surely started making small changes over time. And I addressed the stress. I addressed the exercising in smaller intervals. I started with like 10-minute home videos, eventually trained for my first 10K, eventually ran a marathon. Now I run all the time. But all of this was a process. And so in going through this process, it really convicted me that, number one, the things we've talked about, obesity is complex. It's not just one size fits all, as we've been saying, but there are some controllable triggers you have for weight gain, like my sugar intake and what I was doing in terms of my stress management, but there's some uncontrollable, like my genetics, like, all the women in my family gain a lot of weight when we get pregnant. And I actually gained 60 pounds the second time I got pregnant. I kept the weight loss off 5 years the first time, then I gained 60 pounds again, even though I was eating kale, even though I was running. Ellen follows me on Instagram, so she knows I posted, and I ran up until 7 months. I was 7 months pregnant, but I still gained it because that's my genetic predisposition. But the difference this time is I had a strategy to keep the weight off. And I lost it within 7 months after I had my daughter, who is now 3. And I've been able to maintain keeping it off through losing my dad. So Nettie, I definitely shared that with you in January 2020, working on the COVID front lines. I worked in a nursing facility, which was hard hit by the COVID pandemic, launching my business during that. And all of these would have been triggers for emotional eating for me, but I was able to stop, to prevent it because I had this strategy and I knew my why. I knew my motivation for wanting to lose the weight and keeping it off. And I think that's so key when you asked the question earlier, you said, well, why is it so hard to lose weight? Why are people keeping it off? I think it's 2-part. Everything I look at it both biologically and then behaviorally. And then spiritually, we have to look at it holistically. So biologically, we're made to have fat. Like, not all fat is bad, guys. So we are made to have some body fat. That's why it sticks. Oh, it's there. It's the excess body fat that is harmful. Obesity is the condition of excess body fat. There's a certain threshold, a certain percentage. The general population, we say for women, that's greater than 32% body fat. For men, that's greater than 25% body fat. But there's a threshold that which you have excess body fat, and that puts you at risk for disease. So it's important to know that our body was made to keep fat, and our bodies was made to prevent famine, right? That's why fat is a storage mechanism. It holds on to it. So it was made to prevent famine, but we don't live in famine anymore. anymore. We live in Krispy Kreme down the street. We live in food advertisement. We live in all of that. And so this promotes the body's like, oh, great, we need to store more of this energy. Let's keep storing it as fat. So the more you put in the system. So that's one reason why it's so hard. And the second reason I think is really from the internal stuff that we have to do. We need to know our why. Why is this important to you? It can't be because, you know, I want to look good for that trip next week. That's important, but what's your legacy going to be? What's your health wealth? We talk a lot about financial wealth, but are you invested in your health wealth also? So with that, I'll stop in case you have any questions.
That's fabulous, fabulous. Great, great testimonial about the culture in your family. You know, I think most of us, people of color, can speak of someone in our ancestry who has had a larger than life impression on us. And it sounds like Grandma Sylvia had that impression in a very good way. And those skills, those baking skills and all of that, those are good things. And I think what you're saying to us is that we need to hone those skills and don't lose them, use them and embrace those things, but know how to have some balance. Yeah. You mentioned mind, body, and spirit, and that's really what it's about. If we're going to turn obesity around, it's about that triune being. We've talked a little bit about behavior modifications, and you mentioned that a moment ago, and with that being an element to turn obesity around. So in your practice and in your experience with patients and coaching clients, what are some other important elements or information that you'd like to share with us tonight?
Absolutely. So I love what Ellen was alluding to, and even Nettie spoke about. So every craving, everything that we have, to me, there has an origin. And I always think about being a scientist, being a child of God, like I always think about it holistically. So there's the behavioral part of it, and then there's the biological part of it. So when we talk about sugar craving, so as I told you, like the body is trying to regain whatever weight it loses, which is why yo-yo dieting is so hard, and why it happens, because if you don't have a sustainable plan, that weight you lost, your body is, as soon as you lose it, it wants to get back to the highest weight because it's help. That's what it was made to do. So there are chemicals in your body that are stimulating hunger, that are stimulating cravings and things like that also. And then that is coupled with driving the behavior also. So you see what I'm saying? So they're both working together. So sometimes, because obesity is not just a thing of willpower, especially if you have the genetic predisposition, especially if you have the other elements going on, it is helpful to use medications. And I'm not saying everybody will need it, but sometimes you are fighting, just like how you can have asthma, how you can have high blood pressure. There is a component to fight those biological parts of it where you will need medication. And I think that's really misunderstood. A lot of times people think, hey, if I'm doing something holistic, then that means I'm anti-medication, but holistic means treating the whole person. So I think it would be a disservice, just like if you had someone who had asthma and they showed up to the starting line of the race and they were huffing and puffing and trying, and wheezing, you wouldn't be like, do your best, girl. Get out there, run that race. You need to do it. You would be like, girl, here's your inhaler. Okay, now maybe you can try to run the race. So being on a medication, taking a surgery, if that's what is needed, isn't that it's putting you ahead. You're not cheating. It's actually just putting you at the starting line with other people so that you can run the race fairly. So I think it's really important to consider all the elements that are going into play, especially with people who are really, really struggling when it comes to their obesity struggle or with their weight struggles.
Wonderful. So it sounds like if the intervention of behavior modification does not work, and we know that it does not always work for everyone, that the next step sometimes does become medication. And then you mentioned sometimes in some cases there is surgery. Talk a little bit about how one would progress. How would they know behavior modification? Okay, I've gone to this point. I need to move to the next level, which is medication. I've gone to this point with medication, and now I know I need to move to the surgery level. talk a little bit about how one progresses through those phases for those individuals who are in that particular predicament.
Sure. Well, I want to first say, I always say weight loss without wellness is dangerous. And I will continue to say that at any stage of the game, wellness should always be the foundation. And when I say wellness, I mean, that means addressing the lifestyle. So that means addressing your nutritional aspect of it, the psychological aspect, the fitness, the movement or exercise portion. I call exercise movement. I like that better. It makes me move. So, but it means addressing all of it, the spiritual aspect. And that is the foundation of any more advanced intervention you make, and it should always continue throughout it. So if you at least 3, if we're going by medical guidelines, which I'll speak from that perspective, it should be at least 3 months of that trying that holistic kind of wellness-based intervention, and then adding, not subtracting, because some people think, oh, okay, that didn't work, let me go to the medication. No, it is in addition to it. Then you would do the medication. You give a 3-month trial of the medication and see if it works. Now, bariatric surgery or weight loss surgery is a little bit more complicated because people can actually qualify for it depending on the severity of their obesity. I'm not going to get on my soapbox about BMI and its cultural biases, its age bias, and all of that, but that is the best screening tool and the most widely studied. So I'm going to speak from BMI. So BMI of, if you have a BMI greater than 35 with any weight-related conditions, the most common being diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, uncontrolled cholesterol, things like that, you qualify for bariatric surgery, even acid reflux, things like that. If you have a BMI, body mass index, greater than 40, then you automatically qualify for it. Some insurers will require that you go through a multidisciplinary, or as we say, holistic weight loss program for at least 6 months to qualify for the surgery. And I think one important thing I want to say in this platform is really to remember it is never an easy decision to get a weight loss surgery, because I see a lot of shaming of people for choosing to make that decision for their body. And it's not. You're changing your anatomy. You have lifelong follow-up, lifelong complications that can occur. So I just want to honor those people who make that decision. But the most important thing is making sure that you still are using these people here on the panel, either myself, that's a bariatrician, Miss Ellen, who's a nutrition expert, Miss Nettie, who's a weight loss coach, or a holistic wellness coach, because you need support after the surgery. It's not just a one and done thing. It's a lifetime change. So that's the basis of it, if that answers your question.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. That makes a world of sense. We thank you. We thank you for that. I thank you for enlightening us a little bit on the different types of intervention, and helping us again reinforce the fact that one size does not fit all. Just like in our health ministries in our churches, the health ministry in Sister Nettie's church might not look like the health ministry in Dr. Kimber's church, but the ultimate goal is for the congregants to be more whole, mind, body, and spirit. So thank you for helping us understand that. It sounds like we as a people need to change the conversation about obesity. So we want to talk a little bit now. I'm going to move to either Sister Ellen or Sister Nettie, whichever lady would like to respond. We want to talk about how this initiative of Novo Nordisk and NBCUSA H.O.P.E is going to help change that conversation for the people that we serve in our churches and our communities. And I don't know if you ladies want to tag team on this question, or if one of you would just like to respond.
Go ahead, Sister Nettie.
Okay, thank you, Sister. Wow. So how do we go about this? I think that these conversations that we're having are so needed, and they're a very important step. You know, whenever you're trying to change things, a lot of times we can find that change happens through exposure and repetition. And honestly, when we look in the body of Christ, weight issues are challenging across the board, but oftentimes in the body of Christ, it is something that I actually call it health, eating unhealthy. Like some of the steps that we do, it's kind of like a protected vice. We can see it almost as like a stronghold. Sister Ellen, I'm gonna need you to unmute because I love what you talk about repast. Come on in and talk to us about what we do at our. Come on.
And so, like Sister Nettie was saying, initiatives like Turn Obesity Around are important for our church, and they help shift the culture around wellness because they bring it up in conversation. And so when we have conversations like this, it brings our cultural norms to the forefront. And when we bring them to the forefront, it kind of exposes them a little bit to let us know, hey, our norms may or may not be healthy. So, folks are dying in our churches left and right. They're suffering from obesity. They're suffering with, overweight. It is folks are having, heart disease, heart attacks, kidney failure, high blood pressure. It's kind of a conversational piece. It's the expectation in our congregations for folks to, experience these things. So when somebody does have a heart attack, no one's surprised or no one's like, shocked, like, oh, well, just kind of, it's become our norm. And so, I just noticed being, a Baptist girl myself, having to go to a lot of funerals and, singing at a lot of funerals and things like that. And when we go to the funeral right at, because somebody had a heart attack, when we go to the repast, we're eating everything that caused the heart attack. We're eating fried chicken, we're eating, dirty rice, we're eating, square cake. So it's like, the things that contribute to the big three. And I think when I say big three, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. I'm talking about cardiovascular disease. And I'm also talking about hypertension. So, either from the sweetened tea or the juice punch that's not real juice, or, the fried chicken, and just stop. Shout out to Dr. Michael Miner, because, I've been going to National Baptist, for the convention for a while and the Congress. And, when I got to college and I studied human nutrition, dietetic, and agricultural science, I saw this preacher on Twitter saying that he banned fried chicken from his church. And I was just so amazed that he did this. Because it said so much. And, not only did he care about, the spiritual man, but he cared about the physical man too. And so that's why I believe that conversations like this is important. That's how we break yokes. That's how we change cultural norms in our family. And, Sister Nettie talked about this earlier too, cultural norms. And so sometimes in our culture, when you start losing weight or start moving towards a healthier BI, like Doc was talking about, our church folks are going to ask you, are you sick? Mm-hmm. Once you start moving towards a healthier BMI, folks are going to ask you, are you sick? Once you start losing weight, people are like, what's wrong with you? Once you are, kind of take out some of the saturated fats out of your diet, the super salty foods, you kind of get away from the added sugars, you might get taunted or teased by your family members at Christmas or Thanksgiving saying that, you're not eating real food. You're not eating nothing. Well, in essence, the food that we're eating is real, and the food that we are accustomed to is killing us slowly. And so, Sister Nettie, you know how I feel about it. I think conversations like this that equip and not condemn folks about the things, about our health practices, are what's really going to help us turn obesity around. So we got to keep talking about it. We have to keep putting credible folks before the people. And then, and we got to make sure it's culturally appropriate. I was really glad to see Doc today. When I saw her face, I got excited because not only have I seen, the work that she does, but I'm like, hey, this sister is equipped to equip me. When I see Sister Nettie, I'm like, this sister is equipped to equip me. So that's how I feel about it.
You're hitting it all on the head, Sister Ellen. I have personally experienced this, and Doc, I don't know if with your weight loss, the bulk of the comments that I got when I was losing weight and finding my way, not in a struggle bus way, but in a way of changing my lifestyle and being so excited about it that I was talking to other people about the things that I was doing. The bulk of the condemning kind of conversation or comments that I got came when I was in the church, from people just saying, what's wrong? It was exactly that. You sick? What you doing? Don't lose too much weight and all of that. And I think these conversations, when we have them in the church, we certainly by no way, shape, form, or fashion are calling anybody out. We want to just call people to awareness and to call people up. And we have to have it over and over again because it is so ingrained in our overall culture. It is supported in the environment. We have so many limiting beliefs and so many counter healthy influences that we have to have these conversations over and over and over and over in a loving but straightforward, I love that you say culturally appropriate way. Just the other day, I was on a call with a pastor who actually had me to do a session with him and his family. They all got on Zoom and we were talking about the tea. And I literally took a tablespoon and looked at how many grams of sugar was in the tea that he was drinking and took a tablespoon and put that, showing what was in the Coke. And it was, since then, he's been telling his congregation, he was like, don't call her because she's a disruptor. But what he was basically saying is that sometimes we just have to actually see it and think, as a man thinketh, so is he. We need some renewing of our mind. We need some renewing of perspectives on how we do this, on what we call good. And it even goes back, if we look at some of the foods that we have, God blessed our ancestors to survive on some of these scraps and some of these preparations that was all that was available to them back when we were in a period of enslavement, but now we're off the plantation and we're still eating in some of these ways and calling it hallowed in tradition. And it is killing us, and it is killing us. So we're just looking at things. We're putting it out there to say, does this line up with treating my temple like a temple? And then instead of just always asking God to just rotely bless the food I'm about to receive to nourish my body, can we ask God to bless our food choices so that we're actually consuming things that will really edify our bodies and take care of them in the way that we're called to do? And it has the same thing to do with exercise and so on and so forth. So these conversations are just so important because we've got a lot to shift, right? But with God, all things are possible. And so we're thankful for this opportunity.
Amen. Amen. Beautiful. I want to spotlight our speakers again, because this has been such a rich conversation. Uh, we've talked about some things that hit hard within our communities. We know that it is part of our culture to eat, to uh, to consider breaking bread as the center of everything that we do. And we know that breaking bread together breaks down barriers, but we've got to think about what bread are we choosing? How are we doing this? There's a way to fellowship without killing ourselves. And we can enjoy our food and we can eat some of these things in moderation. I have not heard a single one of you tell me to never have another piece of red velvet cake. I have not heard a single one of you say that. But what I've heard you say is remember that this is about holistic wellness, about mind, body, and spirit, and that we have to shift. I call it a paradigm shift. As you were speaking earlier about weight loss, I think all three of you mentioned it, about the comments that people make. We live in a culture where if someone is chubby, or the word they like to use now is fluffy, people like to say, oh, isn't she fine? Even if it's a child, that's a fine child right there. No, that's a child that you are feeding to death. In my story, and I'll be really brief in it, my testimony is also about my grandmother, Dr. Bowley. I was named for her as well. And I never knew her. She was a very heavy woman, I'm told. But her weight came from childbirth, as you mentioned, where you had a couple of children and gained some weight with each. She had 8 and gained weight. Of course, I mean, look how many years ago that was. People had larger families on the farm back then. So there was a reason for her weight gain. People didn't know the things then that they know now. But the story in our family that is passed down is that when she passed away at the age of 58 of a very sudden heart attack, when my mom and all of her siblings were very young, a friend of theirs who actually worked for the funeral home, who came and picked up this very big woman's body from our family home, said to them, children, I know y'all are hurt, y'all are upset. Of course, he didn't say it that day. He waited until things had settled down. But he said, you fed your mother to death because the way you loved on her was by bringing her a burger if you went somewhere, or bringing her some cake. So that's, again, part of our culture. And that was certainly not intentional. She probably was predisposed to heart disease anyway. And of course, there were access issues back then, lack of access to medical care. But the point is, in almost every Black family, almost every Black household, we can talk about a situation of a loved one who has eaten themselves to death unintentionally, but it happens too often. And we promote it, like you said, by either shaming people for weight loss or by building them up when they get a little bit thick, when they get a little chubby, when they become full figured, and full figured grows into something else. So it's important to have these hard conversations. If we love our brothers and sisters in Christ, we've got to do this. And I think we have the right partnership to do it with NBCUSA and Novo Nordisk working together to make this happen. Again, we do want to acknowledge Novo Nordisk as our sponsor. Guys, we have covered a whole lot of information tonight, and it has been rich. The best part is coming up next, though. We want to hear from our audience. We want to give them an opportunity to speak and to ask the experts some questions. I'm going to take the spotlight off of myself. I'm going to leave Dr. Kimber and Sister Johnson, Sister McKnight, and Dr. Bowley on spotlight so they can address questions. What our attendees can do is either type their question in the chat or raise their virtual hand. And I think we have one hand that has been up for a moment. So we'll give everyone an opportunity to voice their questions to these experts. For those individuals who are watching on social media, we do have someone who is monitoring Facebook, and we're going to try our best to capture some of your questions as well. But we will certainly start with the folks who are watching via Zoom. Once again, we want to acknowledge our sponsor, our major sponsor, Novo Nordisk, for sponsoring our NBCUSA H.O.P.E, Turn Obesity Around initiative. I'm going to try to do that screen one more time before we go to the question and answer section. If I can make that screen show up, I will do that. And I love technology, you all. This is something that we have been blessed to get deeper into with the pandemic. Everything happens for a reason. And there we are. So everybody remember NBCUSA H.O.P.E and the collaboration with Novo Nordisk. Again, we do thank Novo Nordisk for being our major sponsor and for helping us to help our constituents to live healthier lives. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. All right, we're going to go back to our speakers and put them on the screen again. And I want to go through the questions that our audience may have to really dig deep into some of the concerns that people have about obesity and how we can turn it around. And we don't want to turn it around and make a 360-degree turn because we're right back where we started. We want to turn like this picture of a driving sign. We want to just go in the right direction. So we'll go over to our chat box. And again, anyone that has questions may raise your hand. I believe Sister Ophelia had her hand up for a moment. So I'm going to go through and try to allow everyone an opportunity to speak. Sister Ophelia, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and go ahead with your question. Okay, we're going to move. I'm looking through the chat to see if there are any questions there. Here's one question. Is the food that we eat, we need to ask ourselves, is the food that we eat combating or contributing to chronic disease? And I guess the part B to that would be, how do we recognize the signs? Because some of these conditions are silent killers. For example, high blood pressure. We often don't know that we have it until it's too late, or until we've got a splitting headache, or we're fainting or dizzy. So Dr. Bowley, would you like to address that one? I believe you're still muted.
Sure. Thank you so much for that wonderful question. I think one of the key places to start is making sure you're getting those regular health screenings. Ellen highlighted that, like when it comes to hypertension or high blood pressure, you're right, you won't have symptoms till it is quote unquote too late. By the time you manifest symptoms, it may be too far along. So making sure that you're getting at baseline your annual screening exam is the first place to start, just to make sure that you're getting blood work done, getting your blood pressure checked and things like that. Now, in regards to how do you know whether the foods are helpful? And I like to think about it, I always, in my program in Embrace You, we talk about, are the foods helpful or unhelpful? That's how we think about it, because honestly, any food can become unhelpful if you eat it in excess, right? Or if you're only emotionally eating it and you're not using it to fuel your body. Food should be fuel for your body. So in general terms, I think checking in if you have a condition, paying attention to the sodium levels, we can get into that, paying attention to the carbohydrate levels, or how much sugars or added sugars or things are in your food. But I think the easiest way to think about food really is it fuel for your body? And I'm sure Ellen can speak a lot towards this too. And how processed it is. We eat a lot of that processed food. So really trying to eat those natural, clean foods, like the way that it was originally created and made, versus something that has been synthesized and has a lot of added chemicals and hormones and things to it. But then whatever you eat, really checking in, how does this make me feel afterwards? If you're getting bloated, if you're weighed down, if you're tired, your body will give you signs and symptoms that this may not be the best thing for me. It's not helping me. It's not helpful for me. And I think checking in with yourself continually and listening to those signs your body is giving are important, in addition to following those guidelines. But I say eating clean and minimizing the processed foods that you're adding in as well. Ellen, did you have anything else to add? I'm sure, we can speak whole lectures right about this.
You did a lot of key points there. Definitely, you said, you alluded to, eating is clean. You mentioned eating clean. And so just another way to think about that is eating food as naturally as possible. Dr. Bowley also said that, but eating food as close as the way God made them, right? Ask yourself some questions like, does this food grow out of the ground? Can you pick it off a tree? Does it grow out of can you pick it off of a vine? Or was it made in a plant? Ask yourself those questions. And at the core, that's essentially asking, is this food real? You know what I'm saying? Is this food offering my body vitamins and minerals? I want to also encourage you to eat foods that are colorful. I often say, if everything on your plate is brown or white, 9 times out of 10 is either high in added sugar, fat, and sodium. And we know that sodium is linked to hypertension, added sugar is linked to type 2 diabetes, and saturated fat is linked to cardiovascular disease. So you make certain that you have a variety of colors on your plate. You need your red foods, green foods, purple foods, yellow foods, orange foods. The different colors offer your bodies different things. We know our red foods, they're high in lycopene, and that helps fight against prostate cancer. And our Black men are experiencing prostate cancer and dying from prostate cancers more than any other group. We know that the blue foods and the purple foods are high in antioxidants. We live in Louisiana, and no matter where you're watching from, but cancer is all around us, and we haven't pinpointed all the different causes. But we know that those purple foods and blue foods are high in antioxidants that fight free radicals and oxidative stress in your body. And so, you just want to make certain that you're eating real food, eating a variety of colors. You want to compare the food label at all times. Whenever you're picking things, Sister Minor mentioned that mayonnaise at the beginning. I love my mayonnaise like the next person. But what has happened to do is like, what kind of mayonnaise am I buying? How much cholesterol is in this mayonnaise, right? Because we don't want plaques to form in our arteries. So compare the food labels, eat real food, and then also, you know, make certain that you're thinking about your preparation methods. You know, we really don't have time to be frying stuff every week or eating fried foods, you know, multiple times during the week. Moderation is definitely the key. So get into baking, broiling, grilling, steaming, barbecuing, sauteing, all those different preparation methods. There's so many other ways that we can consume the foods that we love. So those are some ways that you can help combat chronic disease as it relates to your food.
Excellent. Excellent. And I think a lot of this has to do with learning how to cook. We live in a generation where people simply don't know how to cook. And it doesn't mean you've got to do a 10-course meal every time you sit down to the table, but knowing how to prepare foods in a healthy way where it's still tasty. I think that's something that people are challenged with. Somebody needs to learn how to buy a crock pot, you know, somebody needs to invest in a grill. Those are simple ways that we can better prepare food to make it healthier and still taste good and not have cooking take up a tremendous amount of our time. So we want to go to our question and answer section. We do have a few questions. The first one that I see is from Damon Davis, and he wants to know, how do I find a doctor who knows about obesity to get the medicine? I think that's a question for Dr. Bowley.
Yes, sure. I can happily answer that. So a great reference to look at. So first of all, your doctor should be assessing you to make sure you're qualified for medication. I think one thing to be careful of, there's a lot of people out there who just throw medicine at you and they don't do the holistic part of it and making sure that you have a foundation so that that medicine actually not just gives you a short-term benefit, but you get the maximum benefit of the medication. So again, I will say weight loss without wellness is dangerous, right? So the pills, the medication or whatever kind of pharmaceutical you're using is to help facilitate that, what is those underlying biological processes. So I would recommend, rather than just finding someone who will prescribe medicines, because you can find them, right? I would recommend going to the American Board of Obesity Medicine, and you can search for clinicians in your area through that. There's also the Obesity Medicine Society. They have a Find a Clinician feature, and where you can find people who are members of the Obesity Medicine Association. And so these are people who are qualified to, and there's the Obesity Society as well. So all of these are places where you can find people who have actually been trained to know how to do that multidisciplinary or holistic way of practicing medicine so that you get the maximum benefit from the medication that you're using, as opposed to sometimes people just throw medicines at you, because there are criteria for using the medicines. So I think that's so important to do.
Wonderful, thank you. So there's a process to finding the right medication from a provider.
And there's so many too that you know, I really, when you come to me, I like to look, again, it's not one size fits all. So really knowing what's going on with you metabolically, what's going on in your lifestyle, everything, and putting that together and selecting the best medication for you, as opposed to some places where they give everyone the same medication. So that's so important.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you for your question, Damon. We have an anonymous attendee who has asked Dr. Bowley to talk about how one should talk to their physician about the chronic disease of obesity.
Ooh, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. And I thank you so much for that. So, you know, that question to me is it's loaded, right? Because it implies that the question I have is, why is your doctor not talking to you about it? Right. And so, I mean, they really should be the ones that are initiating, kind of bringing this up to you. And if they don't feel comfortable talking about it, then I think that utilizing some of those resources we talked about in terms of finding a clinician who does understand obesity as a disease is so important. So going to the Obesity Medicine Society and finding the Obesity Medicine Association, going to the American Board of Obesity Medicine and finding someone, going to the Obesity Society. And the reason why I say that, because honestly, in the medical field, it was only in 2013 that obesity was recognized as a disease. So there is still a lot of work that we have for a lot of doctors to really even get on board and recognize that this is not just a lifestyle choice for some people. Yes, lifestyle may be triggering that weight gain, but there's some things in people's body that is like hormonally, biologically, it's a complex disease that is triggering people to gain weight. And you really need a doctor that understands that. To me, if you have to convince your doctor of that, that's already not a great starting point for that level of communication to get the help you need. And I don't know, I'm sorry, I know that might not be the politically correct answer. I could tell you, go to the Stop Obesity Association and bring up this tool, go to the Obesity Action Society, and you can do those things to advocate for yourself, but the doctor, to me, needs to first recognize that it's a disease. And if they don't, I think you need to be with someone who does. And that's my opinion.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that goes back to that concept of patient-centered care.
Absolutely.
The doctor should hear what you're saying verbally, and then there's going to be some non-verbal cues as well if they have a patient that is obese. So the patient should really not have to be bringing this up. The doctor should have already addressed it. It sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, with their weight. I mean, certainly, it brings so many questions to mind. It's like, and so feel free, whoever you are, I know it was anonymous, to reach out to me, and I can at least guide you, because I need more details about that question. It just concerns me. It troubles my spirit. Since we're in a spiritual realm, I can say that it does, that they're not listening to you, and that you feel the need that you have to convince your doctor. There's some hurt in that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. And thank you, anonymous attendee, for posing that question. Our next question, Sister Ophelia Wilson, who I think did have her hand up earlier. Her question says, I had diverticulitis, and after years of suffering, I had to have surgery, and was to have surgery, and the physician advised that she have the surgery. And that if she had not had it, she in having the surgery, she would have a bag for the rest of her life. She says she was blessed to have a great surgery with no bag. And this is quoting her question. It says, but I am very careful of what I eat, never had a weight problem, but a good diet is equal to great health. Praising God. And she says she's not muted now. So, Ms. Ophelia, I tried to paraphrase your question as much as possible. So that's a testimony, basically, of how God allowed her to be healed. And we know that He is the ultimate healer. So thank you for sharing that testimony with us.
Thank you.
We're going to move on. Our next question is from Jonathan Hill. And Jonathan says, and I guess this is to all three of you, what are your thoughts on veganism? And then part two of that, how can church pastors and church leaders encourage healthier eating in the congregation, especially at church events?
And we yield to Sister Nettie on the thoughts on veganism, since she has a cookbook about veganish.
Yes.
So my thoughts on veganism, and the book is called Veganish because of my thoughts about veganism. Whenever you exclude entire groups of foods, you have to be extremely careful. There are studies and there are some research that does point to increased health benefits when you have a plant-forward diet. Now, notice I'm saying plant-forward versus plant-exclusive. And to kind of just give you just a quick background, when a person is true vegan, that means not only do they not eat animal flesh, but they also don't eat animal byproducts. So that means no milk, no eggs. That means that they're not going to eat things that have gelatin that may have been created from the lining of an animal stomach. They're not going to have honey. It's a very restrictive way of eating. And if we go back to what Sister Ellen kind of brought up earlier, and when you go and you do something that is very extreme and that is difficult to be sustained, that can sometimes set you up to start some kind of ups and downs that are not necessarily going to be healthy. Additionally, if you are vegan, you also have to make sure that you're getting adequate protein. It can be done from a plant-based diet, but you have to put a lot of attention into it. You have to make sure you're getting your B vitamins. You have to make sure that you're getting omega fatty acids that a lot of times you might get from, maybe eggs that have that added in, or from fish products. So veganism does not necessarily mean more healthy. I just want to say that. Now, I advocate for veganish simply, and there's not an official definition, but that just basically goes back to what Ellen is saying. It's making your plate look more like the My Plate. A veganish diet is not plant exclusive, it is plant forward. That means the bulk of your foods are real whole foods, fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains. So it's just basically another way that puts this kind of, very popular saying on getting us closer to eating, closer to My Plate, and closer to a way that's going to edify our body. So that's kind of the thought process that I think on vegan eating. And if any of you all, the other panelists, want to chime in as well, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Regarding how do we help promote more healthier eating in our congregations, I think one of the best ways that we can do, and I said this earlier, it comes back to exposure. For a while before we got into this pandemic period where we were not coming together, some of the most effective health ministry outreach that we actually had at our church was involved in lunch and learn sessions. And the lunch and learns could be about anything. They could be about heart disease, colorectal cancer, breast cancer, or whatever. But each time we came together, we made sure that we served healthy foods. We served foods that were some of our traditional foods made in a more healthy way, like Sister Lottie said, or sometimes even shifting it and giving people things that they never had before. And we wouldn't sometimes tell them what it was. We would have it written down. And then after they ate it, we would say, oh, did you know that was quinoa? Or just exposing. So by giving that exposure in a way where we're actually able to try it, that was also very helpful. Other ways that we can do it is to work carefully with our culinary ministries in our churches. And actually kind of have some conversations about what are we serving? What's going to be on the VBS menu? What are we going to be giving the babies? Making sure that we've done some kind of assessment of our congregation. And if more than half, 2/3 of your congregation has diabetes or has hypertension, how are the foods that we're serving reflecting that? So that we're giving good, tasty options that can support that as well. Now, in this age of COVID, we've seen some very successful health ministry outreach where people are doing food demos on Zoom. Like actually, we have a registered dietitian by the name of Bianca Plant at New Hope Baptist Church that is doing a phenomenal job. If y'all ever want to go and pop in on some of hers, and wherever topic that they're talking about, she ends it with a food demonstration where she's showing, and we have seen individuals say, you know what, 4 or 5 weeks later, I tried that recipe that you put out, and we're seeing these small changes happening. So I think those are some of the ways that we can kind of make some of the shift is through exposure. And one thing that I would like to say that is a challenge is to kind of pull back on some of the joking that we do about things like gluttony. Like I believe if we start to call stuff a little bit more what it is according to the Bible, and not again in a calling out way, but to shift some of the language that we have, I think that that's another way that we can help it as well. So those are some of my thoughts, and the other panelists would like to add in as well.
I think those are such great points, Sister Nettie, and I love your books. I can't wait to check that out. I love a good cookbook. And I too, I think number one, if you are diets fail, right? Diets, it has the word die in it, DIE, diet. So it's meant to die. So if you approach veganism as a diet to lose weight, it's not going to last for a long time. And let us not forget that technically French fries and a Coke are vegan, right? So it doesn't imply health intrinsically to it. So I think it gets back to the point of your motivation for why you're doing what you're doing and what is your mindset around it. And if you're trying to create a healthier lifestyle. And so when it comes to the disease processes of obesity, it can be helpful for weight loss if you're doing, like she mentioned, a very plant-forward, a plant-centered approach. But at the same time, for a lot of people, what it ends up being is very rich in carbohydrates, which can be very inflammatory for people and can be associated with additional weight gain. So I think you have to be careful with why you're doing it and what is around it. And I think that, and also to answer your question about what do we do in the body of Christ or in the church regarding trying to transform our eating ministries and how we approach food, I think we've talked a lot about renewing your mind. I think we have to get away from feeling deprived if we don't have certain types of food. It's almost like, oh, if we don't have the red punch, if we don't have the mac and cheese, like we're not really celebrating or it's not as good. And so shifting that mindset to real and reframing what good is, what nutrition looks like, and not shaming some of these healthier foods too, is so important as we kind of re-change our identity and we change the conversations that we have in the body of Christ and what is helpful. Again, looking at what is helpful for us, right? Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. So are the foods we having beneficial for our body? Are they helping us? So that's what we need to be asking. And we can still make them delicious. I'm sure Sister Nay, I can't wait to check this out. So I do like these 15-minute plant-based meals on my Instagram page too. So like make it delicious. It does not have to be disgusting. And I think that's one of these myths that we have about more helpful or helpful food is that it's not tasty, but we can definitely make it delicious.
Can I just add something to what Dr. Boyd just said? That is so right. Y'all, what God made is good. You don't believe me? Look in the Bible. He tells us that what God made is good. When we eat foods closer to the way God made them for us, they can be so delicious. But what has happened is because of the society that we live in and so much that is processed foods are typically highly loaded with extra salt, sugars, and fats. They add those things in combination to actually drive what they call a bliss point. They're actually deliberately organized. Companies, food manufacturers have food engineers that are trying to drive cravings. There's an excellent book out by Michael Moss called Salt, Sugar, Fat that speaks to that. And so there's more going on the surface that is actually training our taste buds. What we feed grows for us to not necessarily crave what God made. As you begin to make these gradual lifestyle changes and do what Sister Ellen said by getting back to eating foods closer to the way God made them. God is so good to us. He honors that. And as the more we eat healthy, natural foods, the more our taste buds will actually acclimate to them. If you've ever noticed, as you start to reduce the amount of sodium, and then all of a sudden you go someplace and eat something that has normal sodium, it's a shock to you because God made our bodies to adapt. And just as they can adapt to things that are overloaded with sugar, salt, fat, highly processed, you can also adapt your taste buds through repeated exposure to enjoy the beautiful, beautiful taste and textures and flavors of foods that God already put in them. We ain't got to overdo what God has done. You know what I mean? And you really can get to a place where a fresh peach, when you bite into it and there's the pop of that skin and there's the tartness on the inside of the skin and the sweetness of the flesh and then the juices running, y'all, it can get to a place where that in season is actually so much better than peach cobbler a la mode, where after 2 bites, all you're tasting is a bunch of sugar and fat. So it's a process. I'm not gonna lie, because I used to tear that stuff up, but you can learn to eat more healthier foods by just exposing yourself and actually doing it as a way of honoring God by enjoying his creations.
Beautiful. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you to all of our attendees who asked questions. I think I covered all the questions that I could see. I know we have some other members of the HOPE team that are trying to help me watch the chat. So HOPE team members, if I've missed a question in the chat, please speak up and voice that question for us now. And I think we have covered everything. All right. Again, we thank you for your expertise. We thank you for your commitment to helping us live healthier. We know that it is a ministry, and you guys are dedicated. And we are looking forward to learning more about how we can turn obesity around. Once again, we want to thank Novo Nordisk for being the major sponsor of our NBC USA HOPE Turn Obesity Around initiative. We also want to remind everyone about NIH's All of Us research program. The National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated is an active participant in that particular initiative. And that particular program works to conduct monthly surveys of how people are coping with this pandemic. If you'd like to learn more, you can email us at info@hopenbc.com. Again, that is info@hopenbc.com. For additional resources and information about general health related issues, please go to our website, which is www.hopenbc.com. And again, I want to go back and show the NIH logo, which is behind me, from all of us. And of course, again, want to acknowledge Novo Nordisk and thank them for their generous sponsorship. We want to thank Dr. Boise Kimber, who is the board chair of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, for being with us tonight and sharing his insights, and also sharing with us a little bit about Novo Nordisk. All right, upcoming events on June the 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and 7 p.m. Central Time. There will be another Turn Obesity Around webinar, but it will be for the Midwest area. And it will be a roundtable discussion, very similar to this one, on obesity in the Black community, the problem that exists and the remedies that exist, with reference to June being National Men's Health Month. On June 21st through 25th will be our virtual National Baptist Congress. Some marketing updates for our health observance calendar that we promote through our HOPE Health Ministry. The month of May is American Stroke Association American Stroke Month. And you ladies all, I think, mentioned stroke as being one of those conditions that often comes about because of obesity. June, the first Sunday in June, which is June 6th, is National Cancer Survivors Day. And as I mentioned a moment ago, June is National Men's Health Month. Our web presence and our social media, we're very thankful that it's very strong. Remember that our webpage is www.hopenbc.com. Our Facebook page, National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated HOPE Health Initiative. We do have a Twitter feed. It's at @Hope_NBCUSA. And of course, our YouTube channel is NBCUSA HOPE. For our webinar surveys, we'd like for all of our attendees to please complete the survey. The online webinar survey can be found at https:// and I hope someone from our HOPE team is typing that in the chat for me, but it's https://hopenbc.com/webinar_survey. I do want to again acknowledge our president of our National Baptist Convention, Dr. Jerry Young. our General Secretary, Dr. Alvin Edwards, our Chair of the Federal Faith-Based Development Initiative, Dr. Alvin Love, and our National Director of the NBCUSA Liaison to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, my wonderful other half, Dr. Michael Miner, who stepped out on faith and banned that fried chicken in the church. And we joke and tease and people laugh about it, all this 10 or 12 years later, but it resonates with people. So I think that what you, our wonderful esteemed panelists, have shared with us tonight has helped to underscore the importance of the faith community stepping out on faith to help us turn obesity around. All right, our team for HOPE, Dr. Michael Miner, Pastor Bernard Montgomery, Sister Bettina Campbell, Pastor Dexter Moraney, Sister Ellen McKnight, Dr. Felicia Washington, Minister Geraldine Moore, Dr. Desi Levy, Sister Linda Carper, Sister Loretta Miller, Dr. Lavora Williams, Sister Michelle Johnson, and yours truly, Lottie Miner. Again, we acknowledge our president, Dr. Young, who reminds us to envision the future exceptionally. This has been a production of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, the nation's largest Black denomination. Our sponsor, our major sponsor tonight has been Novo Nordisk, and we do thank them for their generous sponsorship. God bless you and God keep you is my prayer. We are going to sign off of social media, Facebook and YouTube. We will stay on Zoom for a moment for those that are on Zoom with us. God bless you all.